Hey folks, welcome to Katmandu, Nepal. Over the next 2 weeks, I'm leading a photography tour up to Upper Mustang, and I've brought along the Olympus OMD E-M10 Mark III to test out. This is their entry-level camera. It was just updated from the Mark II. Main difference being that it added 4K video, but it's still got their 5-axis stabilization, single SD card slot, rotating screen. It's now got a touch screen. You can see the kind of environment I'm in here. I brought along 3 lenses for this. Let's check them out. The first one is a 7 to 14mm f2.8. This is their Pro line of lenses. It's a fully weather sealed lens. Next up, I brought along the 45mm f1.8. This with the crop factor becomes a 90mm field of view. I'm hoping this is going to be a good compact portrait lens for the trip. And finally, the generation 2 of their 14 to 42mm variable aperture. This is a tiny little lens, but it gives you a great focal range for walking around. So this being the entry-level camera, it's only $650 US, which for this kind of point in the market, I think could appeal to a lot of people. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to put this through its paces and try and answer the question whether this is the best budget entry-level mirrorless camera for your money. Now, this is not a full field-tested review. I'm not taking drone footage, so I'm not going to be able to put together that whole thing, but I will be putting together a series of vignettes of travel-style videos all filmed with this guy, so you'll be able to see how the video quality is in addition to the stills. Let's do it.
We started our tour in Nepal in Katmandu, a city of 2 million people, or once you factor in the surrounding areas, 6 million people. It's absolutely jam-packed, non-stop, honking horns, writhing masses of people, sights, sounds, smells. It's really overwhelming on your first arrival, but just amazing. It's at 1,400 meters or about 4,600 feet, so not too high, and a good place for us to start our trip as we ascend up towards Upper Mustang. We explored the downtown city as well as some of the older historic areas. It's great to be able to get in and wander around and mix in with the locals. Next up, it was time for a couple of short flights to head up into the mountains to Johnson, which is the gateway to Upper Mustang.
Okay folks, so let's talk about lenses. As I told you, I'm traveling with 3 different lenses, and without sounding like a fanboy, I really enjoyed shooting with all 3 of them. The cross-section they gave me really would be enough for a casual photography trip. The 7 to 14 f2.8 is great. It's weather sealed. I found it focuses really well, and the image quality, look, it's not as good as say my Tamron 15 to 30 or the Nikon 14 to 24, but it's pretty darn good, and the price isn't nearly as much as those ones. And considering it's a 2.8, it's not over the top in terms of its size. The 45 1.8 is so tiny, and I did use that a lot for portraits. The equivalent focal length of 90mm is just great. It's not that sharp, it's fine, but it's not like a breathtaking portrait prime. They have just announced a new in the Pro line, like this guy, an 85 1.2. Sorry, a 45 1.2, which again becomes about a 90mm. So that will be one that maybe, if you're really into portraiture, is a better choice. And then the 14 to 42, I mean, it's a variable aperture, it's tiny, but it focuses fast. And as a walk-around kit, that on this little body was just fantastic. I found myself using that quite a bit actually. Because to be honest, this big lens on the small body, it starts to become a bit unwieldy, especially because I can only fit 3 fingers on the camera. It makes it a bit hard to grip with such a big front heavy lens on it.
As we got up into the higher elevations in places like Kagbeni, we were really lucky that we were traveling with some of the family of the former royal family of the Kingdom of Lo. Traveling with these insiders meant that it's fine for us to film inside temples and different relics that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. The geology of this part of Nepal is absolutely amazing. It seems everywhere you look it's a different kind of rock formation with different kind of colors. And you might have noticed some caves there. Nepal has thousands and thousands of man-made caves that we're going to take a look at a little later.
All right, folks, two things that I've found really impressive about the Olympus so far. First of all, the battery life is great. I've been shooting and filming quite a lot. I'm not always turning it off to save battery, and I haven't in a day yet completely exhausted a battery. For a mirrorless camera, and especially such a tiny one, I think that's a really great performance. The second thing is the stabilization is out of this world. I know Olympus are generally great for that, but this being the entry-level model, I thought they may have held back on it a little bit and just only given that to the top end. Take a look at this clip. I gave the camera to one of our guests who was in the front seat of the Jeep. It's not perfectly still. I mean, it's not on a gimbal, but look how the bonnet of the car is bouncing around, the hood, and then compare how the frame is moving, and you can see it's performing extremely well in video. And also for stills, take a look at this shot. We were walking to a fancy lodge owned by the royal family up here in Upper Mustang. This shot was taken handheld at a half a second. Now, it's still noisy because it was pitch black, but in terms of sharpness, the stabilization actually let me get the shot at half a second at the end of a long and exhausting day. Pretty phenomenal result.
We were wandering through a tiny village high in the mountains where almost everyone had left because winter was coming, and we heard some prayers coming from an upper window. Going in, we found a small temple inside a home and were welcomed in, offered tea, and we were able to witness this small intimate prayer gathering inside someone's home. Before long, I saw a little kitten scamper past the door, which drew my attention, and I ended up chasing her around and playing on the roof before getting a nice hug.
Okay folks, so I'm back in Katmandu now, and time to do a wrap up on this camera. As I said at the beginning, I'm going to try and answer definitively whether or not I think this is the best mirrorless camera for someone on a low budget or a beginner. Now, I have to say overall, I'm really impressed. I had used higher end OMD system cameras before, and I wasn't sure how it would all translate, but the stabilization and the touchscreen and the 4K are all great. As I said, all the footage you're seeing other than these things where I'm addressing the camera directly or where it mentions that it was taken with the D850 or whatever, it was all taken with this guy. So it's got some really good improvements over the Mark II, and for a price of $650 body only, I really do think it's a great option for people. Now, there's two things that I think are kind of holding it back, and one of them is kind of a perception thing and the other one is a legitimate one. First of all, it's only 16 megapixels. Now, cell phones are at that level now. Most APS-C cameras are starting at 24 megapixels. Having said that, you know, my Nikon D5 is no megapixel monster, but you know, 4K video is 12 and a bit megapixel already, roughly. So 16 is really not that high. Now, if you're just going to be using it as a, you know, simple travel camera, you're going to share your pictures on social media, maybe you make a travel photography A4 8x10 kind of size book out of it, then I think that's going to be just fine. But a lot of the others that it's competing with are APS-C rather than Micro Four Thirds, and are doing 24 megapixels rather than the 16. The other one is the contrast-based AF system. Whilst I found it works really well for grabbing focus on static objects or slow-moving objects or even objects in low light, for moving objects, it really isn't that great. So if you're going to be shooting fast-moving things, then you're going to struggle with this one. You'd want to be looking at something else on the market, perhaps a higher-end Olympus, or there's two obvious ones that compete with this one. So first of all, the Sony a6000, it's actually a little bit cheaper than this one. It is 24 megapixel APS-C and it focuses faster. However, it doesn't have the 4K, it doesn't have the stabilization, and it doesn't have the touchscreen. The other one is the Fuji X-T20. That is faster, it is doing a lot of great stuff, but it also doesn't have stabilization and it costs significantly more than this one. So I would say at that price point of around $650, if you're looking for a mirrorless camera, as long as you're not going to be shooting fast moving objects, as long as you don't have giant hands or intend to use big lenses on it, this is a really great option. I hope you enjoyed this one. I do plan on getting back to doing some more field tested reviews in future, so let me know what camera reviews you'd like to see done in future. Please do like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon with more.